this is a reflection of like the reality of like geopolitics and like nationalist struggle and like anarchic struggle, and how all of it collides.
You know, resistant forces having their own reactionary ideologies and religions. And things like that.
And it's like it's amazing to me that like anime fans would pretend it's a coincidence that he chose the Emishi tribe, which like literally fought off the formation of the Japanese empire, Japanese nation state, and they'll pretend that's a coincidence. You know,
this is the point.
That goes deep.
No, this is the point. This is like your original point of like, stop making it political, bro. It's just a fucking kiddie cartoon movie, dude.
Exactly.
Calm down. Calm down, okay?
Yeah, and it's like that, like that through line
tying it back to the Dragon Ball
Z. Right.
But we can look at it that way.
We can look at it that way. And
but it's like read one Miyazaki interview.
Yeah, exactly.
He's telling you what it is.
Like, oh yeah, it's a coincidence that this man who coincidentally portrayed indigenous people as like the heroes of a story also coincidentally boycotted the Oscars because of the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Right. Yeah, that's all coincidence.
Yeah.
None of that has any bearing on reality.
Right. People, like, it's just a cartoon, bro.
It's just a cartoon, dog.
People,
it's not
like,
that deep.
Recently on the timeline, a couple tweets. One was the scene like in like the first episode of Dragon Ball where Goku like looks up Bulma's skirt or like takes off her panties.
Yeah.
And then there's like another scene where Bulma gets like attacked by like a black and brown man. And it also looks not good.
That's in my video.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's just like, that's, come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's like, you straight up get, I don't know. Yeah. It's just.
I think that's all fair game.
Well, there's this thing, you know what it is? It's escapism. It's people want, it's like, this is my fiction, my art, this is my escape. Don't bring your real world shit into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, sorry, the real world shaped your quote unquote escape. Sorry.
It shaped who created your escape.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, it shaped it all. I mean, it shapes it all. You know? And it goes beyond just the expression. It's in how that shit was produced, how it fucking got to you, and all of that shit.
Yeah.
All of that, it's like in this, to use an overused word.
J.K. Rowling.
Yeah. I mean there's a conversation.
She's got shit in Harry Potter.
That's Cho Chang, that name.
Oh my
there's
God.
all
like
there's the goblins, you know.
Yeah.
Or the fucking
Oh yeah.
Gringotts, Banks.
Yeah. I mean, it's like
Yeah. There's even the conversation in anime, like the early days, of how most of this stuff, one, got to us through like college students, which were the only people that had access to like the internet at that time.
Right.
But also a lot of these people had like military connections.
Interesting.
Because who else could really be in and out of Japan like that to get like media over here, you know? There's that conversation to be had.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a whole conversation in of itself.
Yeah. It's a whole.
It's all a means to legitimize Japan-U.S. relations and imperial empire.
There is that conversation, man. It's like people are really just kind of letting this.
And that shit is deep. That shit is deep, and I think about it too at the level, because I always explain to people how from the time I was a kid, from the time I was a kid, I've been into some type of cultural export from Japan, you know, whether it's a lot of us, it's like normal video games, cartoons, television. Then I got, you know, a little bit older, and then it was like fashion, and then you think back on like the nationalistic sort of like implications of it all, and the narratives of it all, and me coming to have the politics that I have now, and like, you know, I'm always rambling about the nation state and going us organizing beyond it and like the next system. I've been able to kind of hold that context of like there are these broader forces that have been at play for decades, and they have their interests and whatever in terms of the U.S. and Japan and the so-called West, but then also come to appreciate just the human artistic and creative and cultural contributions that have come out of Japan and from Japanese people in the place.
And I think that goes for all countries. I mean,
but I bring this up though because for a lot of my favorite Japanese creatives, most of them are like leftists or left leaning or whatever, and a part of that for a lot of them has to do with them. They almost want to reject their Japanese identity because they understand the horrors of the 20th century and back, and they have a critique of how society is structured. I'm specifically thinking about Ryuichi Sakamoto because he talked about this in interviews. He actually had, when he was younger, there's this legendary avant-garde composer named Toru Takemitsu. He's like one of my favorite composers of all time, next to Sakamoto. And when Sakamoto was younger, Takemitsu was like sort of in the end, sort of, I guess you could say, the last arc of his life and career. And he started incorporating more traditional Japanese, instrumentation and chord progressions and instruments into his music. And I think I read a story about how Sakamoto like showed up to, and if I'm misremembering, I apologize, but he showed up to one of Toru Takemitsu's like performances or shows or concerts or something, and was like handing out pamphlets, like kind of like telling people not to support him or something. Yeah. For that reason, for that choice, because he almost interpreted it as like this is violent, like what you're doing. And
interesting. The
you get what I'm saying? Yeah, because before that he just did it very experimental, self-taught, also just a fucking genius. But yeah, then he just starts to just incorporate, things that sound distinctively Japanese. And Sakamoto, he must have been in college or something, or like in his late teens or early 20s. He sees that and he's just like, "Fuck you, man! Like fuck you!" Yeah,
Wow. It's
and it wasn't until later in his life and career, I guess, maybe even just some years later, to where he's able to contextualize it in that way that I'm describing, where he can be like, okay, yes, this fucked up shit happened, but like people are people, and this is what people did, and there's good and there's bad. Musically, there's some great stuff, and that's how we get a lot of Sakamoto's music. Yellow Magic Orchestra, it's distinctively, there's a Japanese, cultural quality, to it. Yeah. And but it does, even as I'm saying Japanese, it's like when you do have this understanding, it does call for like how do we even how we describe things culturally? How do we move beyond this monolithic nationalistic identity? And I'm sure that a lot of Japanese creators with this type of thinking wonder the same thing. They're like, how can we describe whatever this is without calling it Japanese? Because
Miyazaki has a similar through line, because partly because of his family's participation in the war, like his dad and his uncle made parts for the Mitsubishi Zeros, right? Right. And so
he had planes, or
those are the planes that were used in Pearl Harbor.
Oh shit! Wow.
So he has a very direct connection. Like he brings up this memory that might be fake. His brother has said it might not have happened this way, but he like has a memory of being 4 years old and like his family escaping to Utsunomiya, where the factory was, while the U.S. is firebombing Tokyo, and like a woman and her child asking them for help, and they just left him. And he has that memory as like, and that's like his defining memories of Japan. But like, that's why I've been telling people like Totoro to me is a war movie, because his image.
I mean, you should watch Grave of the Fireflies.
Well, it was a double feature with Grave of the Fireflies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
that's fire.
And so to me, that's like, there's the real picture.
That's beautiful.
Of the war, and then there's Totoro, which is like he lived at his grandfather's beautiful garden estate.
Right.
And so to me, Totoro is like a war movie, and after that, like, or before that, a lot of his films are just like based in a vague like analog of Europe. Like a lot of his stuff is
Eurocentric, Eurocentricity.
Because he really just hates Japan and Japaneseness and all this stuff. And
it's really interesting.
Yeah, and he had a similar thing happen. And you can really get into like questions about like third positionism and all, like how fascist threads can creep in to this type of stuff. But like he got a lot of criticism with his most recent movie, The Wind Rises, because it portrays the Jiro Horikoshi, who is the man who designed the Mitsubishi Zero. And to me, absolutely, you could like, you know, thematically, that's a crazy choice. But if you pair it up with all of his work before that and the themes that he's unpacked beforehand, to me, that film is like, this is a man who wanted to design planes, and how fucked up is it that my only option to if I want to do that is so to contribute to the
engineers. Only options are now.
Like even
Same
like
shit.
Neil deGrasse Tyson has said that like all the work I've done has gone to military shit.
So the film is like one big face it.
Yeah,
you know, that's one way I feel like you could interpret it. Yeah, face this.
And to clarify, like face what? Like face the contradiction.
Yeah,
kind of?
Face that nation state contradiction and like
how you can have a traditional culture of a community of human beings that does have things you can love about it, but that, you know, ultimately it's like within.
Well, you got to unpack the top layer, not to deviate too far from what the point you were making. But I was just gonna say, like, on even you say traditional, it's like, what does that mean? And
I'm saying, like,
I'm not saying directly to you. I'm saying in general, like that's a question all of us have to interrogate.
Yeah,
you know, like, what does it mean that millions and millions of people identify with this monolithic, what they call homogenous, identity? It's like, no, you're made up. Your identity is made up of the Chinese and Korean, and we're using nation state terms here to talk about big groups of people, but you come from that part of the land too, and indigenous Ainu people, and you're a mix of all of those peoples. That's what you are. So what is Japan?
I mean, you know, Ashitaka in Mononoke is the last of the Amishi tribe. This, you know, I already said this, but the tribe that stood up to Japanese imperialism early on, like the 1500s, I think.
And were they? Would you consider them indigenous?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you, I feel like face it though on The Wind Rises is just at the level of you're a creative. And to do your thing, you're doing a deal with the devil.
Exactly. Like you have no other choice. There's even these dream sequences with this, I forget his name, but this Italian engineer who is just like, just look at the beauty of airplanes and aircraft. You could just fly through, and he has these dreams where they just fly and stand on the wings of planes. And it's like these beautiful sequences. And then there's a scene where he goes to Germany to learn from German engineers, and you see their planes are just like these ugly, like
bombers.
Like if you remember like the Monty Python animated sequences, they're like ugly and like bleak like that, like those would be. And he's very deliberate in his choices like that. And there's a scene of Werner Herzog being like smoking cigarettes, being like, Germany will fall, Japan will fall, all of this, all this stuff.
And what year does it take place? In the early 30s, maybe? Or?
No, this is like during World War II.
Oh shit!
They in the thick of it, baby.
So they're straight going to Nazis.
Yeah, 100, like straight up.
They in them imperialist
Which is
guts.
why I say this is an insane choice.
No, I mean
to make this move, but like
that's like the person you would need to.
Yeah, this is the only person where I want to take it in good faith and say like, he's just saying these things that like, and it's again to bring it back to like Bookchin, it's getting into this like the technology for the world we want to live in exists,
right?
And we've made it and then we've destroyed it in the interest of imperial projects. You know, to not even to like destroy America, but to make a statement toward America. We've created these machines that kill people when they could just fly around and be pretty. And you know, it's
side note, there's a fucking incredible Errol Morris documentary called Fog of War, which is him interviewing Robert McNamara, who I forget his like full credentials, whatever, but he was like Secretary of State or whatever. I don't know. He was like in charge of a lot of military shit through World War II and Vietnam. And there's a sequence where they go over, they just basically, it's like a montage, and it's numbers and then city names, and it's casualties from firebombing, where we firebombed Japan. And that sequence, you'll never forget it, because it's just like it's unfathomable, the amount of people we killed from firebombing, which is like not even remotely humane. It's like sarin gas. It's just like you're just
the amount of people the U.S. killed, the U.S. government.
That's what I'm saying.
You said we.
Right. Yeah.
You need to unpack the nationalistic conditioning in your mind, my brother. You need to get. Are you listening to me? You need to get America out of your head, my brother.
I'm trying to take.
Which side are you on, my brother?
I pay taxes to the country that did that.
Okay, well, you were coercively put into a situation where you have to do that to live. You did not choose that, my brother.
Thank you. Yeah. The U.S. did it.
No, all jokes aside, that was like a big epiphany for me.
Is saying we?
Well, no, I'm saying the first time I had somebody be like, who's we? You know? And it's like, yeah, fuck America. What the fuck? American? Yeah. What?
Yeah. Right.
Who gives a fucking shit about America? I give a fuck about the people that are around me. I give a fuck about my family and my community and my friends. And I give a fuck about the well-being of people in general. I don't need America to do that.
Yeah. Roy, it's
Roy Wood Jr.
It's way less like a we of pride and more like a we of admission of like complicity of like I.
But
I
even that though, you're that's a part of the conditioning.
Yeah.
They want you to identify with what they do. They want you to identify with their
like, why am I going to Europeans and be like, yeah, we're so stupid over there? It's like, I'm not fucking stupid. Like, fuck that. Like, I like canes and shit, but I'm not fucking stupid.
Roy Wood Jr. has a great joke about that, where he's like, you know, black people never write songs about America. They never write songs about it. Obviously, it's not true. But he's like, black folks don't write songs about America. They write songs about individual cities where you can have a good time.
He's like,
on point. Even James Brown, living in America. He's talking about Chicago, Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, man. That shit is so funny to me.
But that's so crucial. It's just like a testament to how deep that conditioning
Dude, for real.
It's all these things, like in all these ways you don't even think about. You don't even think to think about.
Yeah,
you know?
It's like everyone. It's like it's because I don't know. It's like everyone around you also thinks that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We see ourselves as Americans.
They fucking made us say the Pledge of Allegiance as children.
Right.
Fucking, I wish I could.
I went to Catholic school, so it was like that, then pray. So it's like you're two different gods before you even get started. You know what I mean?
And they want to talk up. Look, and we're not doing this whataboutism bullshit. Hear me out. We're not. This is not what this is. But these people, the ruling class over here in the U.S., want to point to the People's Republic of China and DPRK and all these places. They're also fucked up.
Yeah,
they're also fucked up. But that you don't see the hypocrisy in that. You had a stand. You make us stand in a room with our hand over our hearts and go, "One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." That's crazy.
And it's like we probably had a George Washington, Thomas Jefferson picture in the classroom.
So it's just like in North Korea.
Same shit.
It's just like but it's the same mechanism. It's the same conditioning
Abraham Lincoln next to a globe.
Right, and it's like we got to get away from all of that shit.
Yeah,
we got to get away from all that shit. It's neither of those. None of these projects are good. It's all fucking bad.
Yeah.
You know,
and to the point about Miyazaki, it's just like about, and your point about Sakamoto is just like, how do you evoke the things that are beautiful about the space that we grew up in.
Without
the people,
right?
The people, the land, all of these things, without it becoming this nationalistic thing.
Yeah.
And I even watched watched a video essay on Miyazaki where somebody described him as a nationalist outside of The Wind Rises, which I can see how that can be interpreted as a nationalist film. But like, just the fact that he portrayed Japan in its beauty. Like just the beauty of the land, the resources,
this is
all
the
of
point
these
Sakamoto
things.
made, if I'm not mistaken. This is the point he made. He's like, I don't have to reject that.
Yeah.
There's customs that are thousands of years old here, and even in the music and in the art. Yeah. And the empire uses that to its own, for its own aims.
But they predate the nation state by centuries.
Right.
Watch the I mean, this is one of the, emotionally tragic parts about climate change is the American West is gorgeous. It's a gorgeous, majestic, triumphant land. I mean, it's like you watch the documentary The West, and it talks about the first pioneers that and the people that obviously lived there before fucking Europeans showed up. And it's just like, it's a mythic land. It's gorgeous. If you go to Utah, you are awe-inspired. There's slabs of rock that looks like a giant laid them there. I mean, it's just, it's incredible. America, the land of North America is gorgeous. Yeah. Gorgeous. Canada, gorgeous. But
and there were indigenous people who were here for thousands of years who knew how to live in balance with it. Yeah.
Right.
To varying degrees. And that shit is important. There's a through line on everything we're talking about here, like in terms of Miyazaki and the music and all of that stuff. That's like why it's like, it's fucking worth digging into the past and like studying history. And as we've said before, it's like there's some shit people were doing thousands of years ago, ways that they were moving with each other that it holds the fucking keys. It holds the answers for us today. Yeah. You don't have to mystify it in the sense of like making it this magical, what's the expression that's used for
like romanticism or whatever?
Well, it's like, for Black people, it's the magical Negro trope in like film, but then for indigenous people, what is it? Oh, the noble savage. Oh, yeah. It's like the noble savage trope of like, man, they had these magical people. They had the way, and then these other people came.
Wars and shit.
Yeah, they had exactly. That's my
like
point.
they would sometimes, if there was a herd of buffalo, they would run them all off a cliff and they would take one, and there would be 80 dead buffalo that they didn't use. Like,
and there were contradictions too. There were contradictions, and then if we're looking through the last few centuries, you had indigenous people that we talked about, this enslaved African people, and then you had African and indigenous people organizing themselves just however many miles away. So it's not this fucking uniform cookie cuttery narrative or way that it went, but it's just to say, like, to Graeber and Wengrow's point, if you fucking dig in enough, you're gonna find, oh shit, this was a good fucking idea.
That one worked.
Damn, we should maybe try that now.
There's a precedent for all of it. There is even
and even if there's not,
there's just the fact that there are other precedents can suggest that maybe we can try some new shit.
Socially.
And like there were indigenous communities that organized, or at least had like the same cultural attitudes that we have as like people in America. This like workerism and all that. Like there were people with that ethic,
and royalty
and all of those things. Like the Aztec Empire fell because it had that same expansionist bullshit going on that we have now. Because if you went out and brought enough people back to be sacrificed, and they give you a plot of land, but where the fuck is all this land coming from? And so like we have precedents for why what we're doing doesn't work, and for why there are hundreds of other options, thousands of other options.